Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Love and Abuse. I hope you are doing well today. I want to let you know that all information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. Today I'm going to read you an email that I received that I wanted to answer on the air because it's a question I'm asked often, and there's a little angle to this I'm going to take as well. But the question that I get asked often is, am I the emotional abuser? Am I the abusive one? Am I the one doing the bad behavior or the hurtful behavior? And I did have an episode on this probably about a year ago, from this recording. And let me see what it's called. It is called, Are You the Emotionally Abusive One? Finding out if you are emotionally abusive. Actually, that's the title of the article, but the episode is called Are You the Manipulative One? So if you go to my website, loveandabuse.com, you'll find it titled Are You the Emotionally Abusive One? But if you listen on a podcast player, it'll be called Are You the Manipulative One? And it's a great question because a lot of people don't exactly know what emotional abuse consists of. And my last episode, I did talk about what emotional abuse is. And of course, every episode I talk about that, but I think it's helpful to know what it is, but also more helpful to know the intention behind our behavior. So I'm going to get into that in a moment, but let me go ahead and read this email and we'll see where we go with it. This person says, Paul, I've been listening to you for a few years now. Thank you for the calm and kind way you present your advice. In a nutshell, my question is, am I the abuser? He has started to say I'm projecting and I'm actually the abuser. I find myself at a fork in the road every other week or more. Frequently, my husband and I will get into an argument about the most benign things, and it always seems like it's my fault that something sets him off. I may turn down the volume or tell him to open the shades or something, and that'll be upsetting to him. On the other hand, he may aggressively question my ideas in front of a sales assistant or have an "Are you wearing that?" question for me, or I could be biking better. I think that means looking better. I'm not sure. I will respond with dismay of some sort, and again, we will have a blow up. So if I say something to him, it's my fault. If I respond to something, it's my fault. Bottom line is this: all of our fights end up with him saying, I am angry because of you. I am unhappy because of you. We should go our separate ways. We are better off without each other. I've been unhappy for years. I would say I've heard variations of these themes 12 to 20 times a year for the past 2+ years. He's now talking to someone who's not supportive of our marriage, and he refuses to acknowledge this and prefers to meet with her despite my pleas. This person has told him I'm projecting and that I am the abusive one. I'll admit I will eventually yell back at him. I will verbally fight back. He gives me the silent treatment, and I have learned it is more peaceful this way. But I see he is telling this person he stays silent because it's better than my aggression. I have reached a limit to hearing how I am the source of his unhappiness and anger. And I do tell him he's in control of his emotions, but he says it's my fault because I push him too far. Even the smallest things he considers attacks. He says when I do this, he comes out punching, which is why he says horrible things. He never apologizes for anything he does. He just keeps doing them and saying them. And I foolishly keep excusing those things. So I've reached my limit. I think there's only so much a person can hear. My question is, how can I tell if I am the abuser like he says? Is it really me? Thank you and please help. Call me Ronnie. Okay, Ronnie, thank you so much for sharing this. Sorry you are going through this. This is not a pleasant situation. One of the first things that stands out in your email is his aggressive attacks or defenses or whatever you want to call them that causes him to tell you how unhappy he's been. He's been so unhappy for years, he says, yet he does nothing about it. He hasn't left, it looks like, or if he did, he's still there, or he came back and he's still there. So what is he doing? I mean, here's the clear signal I'm getting is that he probably is unhappy. Maybe he really is unhappy about something. Who knows? It could be his own doing. I don't know, but he's unhappy, sure. But when he says he's unhappy and does nothing about it, that will typically create bad behavior. So a person that is unhappy in a situation and doesn't address the reason they're unhappy can tend to lash out. They can tend to be aggressive and hurtful toward others because they're not addressing what's going on inside of them. So they push it outward onto you, and they push it outward onto other people they love. And then they might find people to support their cause, like your husband did, and they talk to those people. And if those people are in agreement, then he creates an us against you attitude, and he will start using that as his defense. In narcissism lingo, they call that flying monkeys. The narcissist will gather people around him that believe him or her, that will do his bidding and will defend him and make him feel more powerful or make him feel justified in his bad behavior. There's all kinds of reasons that they have these flying monkeys around them. But when you have a partner that teams up with somebody that disagrees with you, I've said this before in other ways, in other contexts, you're not in a relationship. This isn't an equal partnership where you're supporting each other and working on things together. This is us against you, or them against you. So when you're in a them against you scenario, you're not in an equal partnership anymore. You're not in a relationship. So your letter kind of screams, this relationship doesn't exist, and I am being either bullied or being aggressed upon for whatever reason, and I don't know where to go. I feel alone and isolated, when you're supposed to have a partner in the relationship that doesn't cause you to feel alone, that is there to support you and be with you and work things out together. So the fact that he's out talking to this other person and getting justification for how he feels and explaining the relationship problems to her just tells me that he's not really interested in fixing the relationship or caring about your happiness too much. I mean, I'm making some guesses here, but from your message, I'm making the guess that he really doesn't care about your happiness and he just wants what he wants. And the problem is he's not telling you what he wants. He is hiding behind some facade of aggression. So this is how I see your message, is that he is hiding behind something. He doesn't want to share it. He doesn't want to tell you. I don't know if it's a secret. I don't know if he isn't attracted to you anymore, or he just doesn't want to tell you that he has lost interest. I don't know what it is, and I could be completely wrong, but I do see this where people get angry and they lash out and they say things like, well, it's all your fault, and they make everything about you, and they take no personal responsibility and say things like, I have things to work on too. When they say, I have things to work on too, and yeah, you're right, I should work on that, and I've had this issue since childhood, when they are admitting things, then you might have a conversation. But when it's all about you and it's all your fault and they do everything right and you do everything wrong, then you're in a one-sided relationship that you cannot win. You cannot, not that it's a contest, but you will never be right. In fact, everything you say is wrong, even if it's logical, even if it's true, even if it's 100% provable, even if you showed him video evidence of the truth, whatever that is, he will find a way to make you wrong about it. Is that very fair of me to say? Well, again, from your description of what's happening, I believe he really wants to say something and really wants to do something, but he's either not committed enough to do it, or he's not brave enough to say it, or he's not something because he's not saying what's really on his mind. I look at this behavior as very common for people that want to say something else, but they aren't. So I would say, I mean, I know you asked the question, am I the abuser? But I'm still on him now. Right now, I'm focused on him because what he's doing is causing you to respond in a way you feel like you're going crazy, or you feel like you have no recourse and there's nothing you can do or say. You're right. There's nothing you can do or say. So you get angry. You get to the point where you get so frustrated, you get overwhelmed because he puts you in what's known as a double bind. You are bound to lose no matter what choice you make and no matter what you say. I say at the end of every episode, you are not going crazy and you deserve kindness and respect. And this is completely opposite. He is causing you to go crazy because he's not telling you exactly what he feels. I mean, he's saying things like, we would be better off without each other. I've been unhappy for years, but he's not doing anything about it. So here's a man that is probably frustrated with his own decisions of either staying in a relationship that he's not enjoying anymore, or who knows what else is going on. But I'm almost 99% sure that he wants to say something or do something and he's not doing it. So he gets upset, he gets angry, and he puts it all on you. And that's not fair to you. It's not fair. So if I were you, knowing what I know and being you in that situation, and suddenly he starts blaming me, I would go above and beyond everything he's trying to do, which is put me on the defense and cause me to continue to think about what I could do differently or better. I would get out of that frame of mind. And I would instead focus on his inaction and his inability to express. Because he's already said it. We should go our separate ways. We're better off without each other. I've been unhappy for years. That tells me that he wants you to be the bad guy. So when he tells his friends what happened and you tell your friends what happened, everyone can point at you as being the one who left. He wants you to make that decision, according to what I'm reading, and I'm just theorizing here, but this is what happens a lot, is that some people will tell you how bad you are, how much you're at fault, how you're the problem, so that when you finally leave, they can tell all their friends, you see, this is what I had to deal with, and she left me high and dry. Now I have to pay the mortgage by myself. Now she's going to take half my stuff. This is one of those things that happens, is they try to make you feel so bad about yourself that you do end up leaving because you don't want to be in that toxic environment. And then when you leave, you're still the bad guy because that's what they tell all their friends. And I mean, that's not the only reason, but that can happen. And that's one of the reasons it happens. So they can point to you as the bad guy. Another reason is because he's already proven to you that he doesn't want to take responsibility for anything. So by saying, I've been unhappy, we're better off without each other, he's hoping you will make the responsible move of leaving the relationship. I'm not saying if you should or shouldn't leave the relationship. I'm just outlining what I'm interpreting from your message, which is he doesn't want to take the action. He doesn't want to make the decision. And I'm willing to bet he probably does this with other things in life as well. Maybe he is indecisive. Maybe he has no coping mechanisms, but it all boils down to him not wanting to look like the bad guy, be the bad guy, and make the decision, and then be responsible for that decision. These are the non-committal people. I see it more often in men than women, but anyone is capable of doing this. So when you have someone that talks like this and says, I'm unhappy, we should not be together, and they don't do anything about it, they're waiting for you to do it. And everything you're describing is telling me that he is trying to drive you away. He is trying to build the wedge. And it does sound like he's doing it on purpose. If he makes you angry enough, you'll finally leave and he will be rid of a problem in his life. Not that you're a problem, but his perspective, he just wants to make you a problem so you'll leave so he can do his next phase of life. And again, I'm theorizing. I could be completely wrong, but I've seen this before. It is typically how it is played out, is somebody just says all this stuff, how unhappy they are, but they never do anything about it. And I'm not talking about an emotional abuse victim who says they're unhappy and they don't do anything about it, because when you're in an abuse situation, sometimes you can't leave. Sometimes you have a challenge leaving. There are financial issues, but sometimes you're isolated from friends and family. There are different variables in that situation. But when there's somebody who's always angry and always upset and always pointing the finger at you and just makes you the main source of all their irritation and problem, and they take no responsibility for it, they are just a non-committal person that doesn't want to make a decision and doesn't want to take responsibility. And everything that happens in the relationship is your fault, so that when you leave, they can say, and she left me too. I know I paint a grim picture, I paint an awful picture, but I've seen this before. May not be your scenario, but from what you wrote, it does seem like it, because it does seem like this is fairly new, at least in the past couple of years, fairly new behavior for him, where something happened and he has a thought or an idea, or he wants to take action, he wants to say something to you, and he never does. So I bring it back to a single question, which I don't think I've said yet, which is, what is your actual problem? You say you're unhappy, you say that we shouldn't be together, but you never do anything about it. So what are you actually unhappy about? And he may say, well, you always do this and it's always your fault and you never want me to be happy. He's going to say all kinds of things. And then you can say, okay, let's just say all of what you said is true. Let's just say everything you say about me is true. Why are you still here? Talk to him as if you were his best friend. Why are you still with that woman? If she treats you so badly, why are you still with her? I want you to be happy, buddy. If you're not happy, then what are you still doing there? That may or may not work. You may say that to him and he may say, well, I can't leave because I can't afford it. And if that were the case, if he makes up some excuse why he's not going to leave, then say, well, can you get along until you can't afford it? You might want to have a conversation that really just breaks it down to the basics. Or maybe he'll say, I don't want to leave. Maybe he'll say something like that. Then if that's the case, you can say, well, let's get help then. Let's talk to a therapist. Let's work things out. If you want to. What I'm doing is I'm forcing him to address the real issue, because all this other stuff, like you said, it's all benign. A lot of it is benign and not worth arguing about. I think it's important to have a discussion that's deeper and drills into the real issues. Like, another way to get to that is, when did you first become unhappy? Let's find out when it started. When did this start? You say, it's my fault for everything. Okay, great. Let's just say all that's true. When did this start? When did you start realizing everything is my fault? Did something happen? It is sort of asking him like a coach. You're asking him questions, but you have to stay out of your own stuff. And that's hard, because when you ask questions of someone with this much upset inside of them, or anger or aggression, you're going to hear that aggression come back. Well, it's your fault. You did this and you did that. And if you can stay in a state of mind where you think, okay, let's just say all that's true. Why are you still here? When did this start? What's really going on? Because if you were really this unhappy, you probably would have left by now. You said you've been unhappy for years, so you've had a lot of time to save up and leave if it's about money, or you've had a lot of time. Let's figure this out. What's really going on here? And so that's where I go with this. He is definitely doing behavior that typically implies that there's something underneath that isn't being said, so it comes out in other destructive ways. It's like when you repress anger toward a parent when you're a child. Let's just say a parent mistreated you, neglected you, or even hurt you when you were a child. But as a child, you didn't get angry back. You just swallowed that anger. You didn't know what to do with it, or whatever it was, upset, the feeling of not being loved, the feeling of unworthiness. You swallowed all that, and then you never healed from it. You never sought therapy for it. You never really expressed it to anyone, or if you did, it didn't fully heal or get released. So you bring all of that into an adult relationship when you start romantic relationships, and now you have all this repressed emotions and these thoughts and feelings about yourself. And because you haven't healed from those things, what ends up happening is that it comes out in your behavior, typically toward not only others, but yourself as well. But others will see it and feel it because you haven't addressed it inside of you. And when we hold on to emotions and feelings and thoughts about ourselves that don't serve us, that aren't healthy for us, and are maybe about other people in toxic situations and abusive situations, when those aren't addressed, they tend to come out in other destructive ways. So that could be happening to him as well. He could have stuff that he hasn't addressed, but I tend to think that there's something on his mind today that he's just not sharing. And you may need to corner him and say, that's it. You've done this long enough. What's really going on? Yeah, you blame me for everything. When you're in a relationship, you talk about stuff, you figure stuff out together, and all you've been doing is trying to alienate me and isolate me and make me feel alone. You're ganging up on me with other people. You never talk to me anymore. So what's the real problem here? And you may even want to push him a little more. Are you just afraid to make a decision? Are you afraid to honor yourself and do what you need to do for you? It's kind of my language, Are you afraid to honor your own boundaries? And are you afraid to honor your own values? I mean, if you really feel this way about me, then why are you still here? What's the point? Why are you staying? It sounds like you're just afraid to make a decision. You may not want to say that. It may hurt you. You may not really feel comfortable saying that. And I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying to develop a different mindset around this so that you're not always on the defense and thinking that you're doing something wrong or thinking that you're being abusive. Your quote abuse is probably a reactive behavior, sometimes called reactive abuse, but I don't even know if it's abuse. You're just reacting like somebody who was feeling crazy or put in a place where there were no options or painted into a corner made to think that no answer was the right answer. So when people get to that point, that overwhelm point, that push to the limit point, yes, you are going to feel like lashing out or lashing back, defending yourself aggressively or assertively. You're going to get to that point. And from what you wrote, it seems like you have to get to that point in order to do this behavior. And it sounds like he knows how to push you to that point to make you look abusive. And that's the final thing I want to say today, is that when somebody pushes you to the point where they can point at you and say, see, you're the abusive one, you have to realize what they're doing. You have to reverse engineer the formula of that tactic. And what I mean by that is understand that they are doing a tactic that causes you to do behavior that they can point at and blame you for being somebody that you really aren't. Meaning he knows how to push you to the limit so that he can highlight that behavior that he created. I mean, you're a part of this too. Yes, you take responsibility for your own behavior, of course, but there's a breaking point that everyone has that when they reach it, you just feel like coming out swinging. That's what it feels like. And it sounds like you're reaching your breaking point. And if he is doing that on purpose, if he's doing this tactic, which I think he is, to push you to that breaking point, then you will always look like the bad guy. Just like I stated in the beginning, you will always look like the bad guy because that's exactly where he wants you to be. So what you need to do is realize how he's pushing you and why he's pushing you to that point so that you don't get to that point anymore. In fact, I don't know if I've said this on this show. I know I said it on my other show, The Overwhelmed Brain, but when somebody is trying to push you to that limit, when they're trying to elicit a response from you, when they want you to be angry, and this is one of those cases, I believe, that he wants you to be angry, when somebody is trying to make you upset by saying something that isn't true about you or is trying to press a button that they know you have, I love the answer, you may be right. That's it. You may be right. I mean, you're not saying they are right. You're not saying that they're wrong. You're not saying anything like that. You're just saying you may be right. What that does is squash the energy, because the energy they are pushing towards you has all this power behind it. And the power amplifies when they hit a wall. And the wall is your defense mechanism. So you say, what? That's not what I did. That's not what I said. That's not what I meant. That's the wall. As soon as you put that wall up, it amplifies their power. And that sounds like just the opposite of what would happen. Like if you put a wall up, that should stop their power, but it doesn't. It amplifies it. Your defensive wall amplifies emotional abuse. And so when you become defensive, That's an emotional abuse tactic that they want you to do so that you will focus on yourself and not them, so they can get away with it. And because you're focused on yourself, you'll never look at them as the issue, although you are, and people do, but they want to keep you focused on yourself. They want to keep you defending yourself. They want to keep you in that space so that you can't come back at them. And as long as they have that power over you, you will always be there. So the thing to do is to change how you respond to their tactic. If their tactic has all this power behind it and your defensive wall amplifies it, then what you might want to do instead is not defend yourself, meaning no wall, and instead, like in Tai Chi, allow the energy to flow right past you. And this is an analogy I use sometimes, is in Tai Chi, if somebody throws a punch at you, you swiftly move to the side and allow the punch to go by, and it wears them out if you do this over and over again. And what's happening, if we're going to paint a picture of this, is all of their forward momentum, their aggression, their energy is coming right at you, and they're hoping it hits so it hurts. But if you move to the side, they stumble, they go forward, they might even fall on their face because they're throwing so much energy at you that there's nothing that stops them. If you were there to stop them, they recenter. They are able to throw the next punch. If a punch lands, and I hope this isn't real for anyone, a real punch, but I'm just talking about verbal punches and emotional energy. When the verbal or emotional energy lands on you, you are completing the formula. You are finishing their pattern, their tactic, and they walk away thinking they won, and you're in your own thoughts thinking, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Or maybe you're angry at that other person, like, I can't believe he doesn't believe me, or she thinks that I'm wrong, whatever. The point is, if they have you where they want you, then where you are is a place of no power. If you want to keep your power, you have to allow their energy to go right past you. Don't put up that defensive wall, at least in the context of what I'm talking about today in this person's letter. Sometimes you have to defend yourself. Sometimes you have to stand up and say no more. I mean, I'm a full proponent of that. Don't get me wrong. What I'm talking about today doesn't cover every single scenario, but in the context of this message and what I'm talking about today, I like using a comment like, okay, you may be right. Their energy goes right past me because I didn't defend myself. And now, what do they do with that? Because the formula changed. The formula for their power making contact with me changed. It didn't make contact with me. I didn't defend myself. I didn't go into a space with the need to explain anything or tell them what they're missing or what they're wrong about. I just said, okay, you may be right. You may be right. So now what? And they might get angry again, and they might say, well, you're doing this and you're the problem. Okay, you may be right. So what are you going to do about it? That might be my next question. Or I might say, so what's next? Let's just say that you're right about everything. We'll go back to what I said earlier. Let's just say that you're right about everything. What's next? Well, you might stump them. I know this takes practice. It takes thought. You have to think about this stuff before you get into these situations, because when you're in this situation, you get stymied because you get emotionally activated. You are definitely getting triggered. And when you're triggered, it's harder to think. So it's good to hear me say things like this and think about things before you get into these arguments or situations, so that when it happens, you are better prepared. You have mentally prepared for the moment when it happens. And it's good just to think about the picture I painted about the energy flowing right past you. As soon as you put up the defensive wall, the energy can't go by. It just hits you. If you don't want it to hit you so you can stay in the fight, and that's probably a bad choice of words, but you stay in the game by allowing the energy to flow past you and then asking them for their next shot. You know, what else? What else you got there? It's another question I have sometimes. What else? What else did I do wrong? You know, just lay it on me. Let's just hear everything. Come on. Let's just hear everything, because you obviously have a lot of energy inside of you. And you know what? Let them just spew it all out. Maybe there's something in there that they'll finally reveal. Maybe this person that wrote, maybe her husband, will finally say something that's been on his mind. Ever since you didn't let me go on that fishing trip, I've been angry at you. I've been wanting to get a divorce, and I'm just so angry with you. Maybe that will come out, and that would be wonderful. It would be wonderful for someone to actually speak a truth, be clear, be authentic, and express what they've been holding on to so that you can get past all this stupid passive-aggressive behavior and these digs and these hurtful comments and behaviors and constant blaming and constantly making you think that you're the problem. It would be wonderful to get to that point. So when you have someone that is finally getting to that point where they're just letting it all out and you let that happen, you may help them reach something deeper inside that they've been wanting to say. I want to thank this person, Ronnie, who sent this email. And your question, am I the emotional abuser? I don't think so. I mean, it does sound like you are getting pushed to the limit. And I don't care who it is. You push the Dalai Lama to the limit. And he probably will eventually strike back. I could be wrong. You can take the most peaceful person and tap them on the head, like the Chinese water torture I heard about. You tap them on the head until they get so sick of your behavior that they finally grab your finger and shove it back in your face or punch you in the face or push you away, whatever it is. We all have a threshold. It may take minutes. It may take hours. It could take days, could take weeks, could take years. Who knows? We all have a threshold, though. There's a point where we're just sick of it. And we're either going to lash back and come out with our arms swinging, or we're just going to keep swallowing it and swallowing it and swallowing it until it just eats away at us, where we become a shell of our former self. And that is not what I want for you. Thank you so much for writing. I hope this helps. I appreciate you sharing that, and share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook provides an evaluation of your relationship based on a 200-point assessment. It's geared toward romantic relationships, but many have used it to determine if family or others in their life are being manipulative or emotionally abusive as well. If you're in a difficult relationship and you'd like to pinpoint the unhealthy behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad, let the workbook help you discover the specific components of bad behavior and put into words what you're experiencing. Get the tools you need to help you reach clarity. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're definitely not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant because you are. Thanks again for joining me. We'll talk again soon.